it's one of the concepts that for many owner managers, they struggle with the idea of being able to predict the future, and why try and write that down. But I really do counter that. I think you as a business owner have the best opportunity to assess what your business might be able to do, and how can you plan best for your business if you haven't tried to work out how much cash you're going to need, whether you're going to have enough cash to achieve the sales or take on the orders that you are hoping to win, and to pay for those staff and those overheads that you've got. I think cash is king, and predicting future cash is vital. I think when we have also seen that many businesses have been either able to or been forced to take on a lot more debt because of COVID, so either they've borrowed using the government schemes, the CBILS or the bounce back scheme, and or they've also deferred their VAT bills, and perhaps they've also been fortunate enough to have been able to agree delays in paying their rent or deferrals in paying their rent. They may even have also had a position where they've not been paying any rates, and then on top of that, furlough has meant they haven't been bearing the full cost of their payroll. All of that means that actually there's a bit of a false position for a lot of businesses right now. So whether we're doing a valuation or whether we're actually just helping a business understand what it's going to need in the next 6, 12, 24 months in funding and facilities in order to trade out of this really tough time, all of that comes back to actually have a proper look at your cash projections. You're in the best place to assess that. For some businesses have found it really easy, or not easy, but a really good time to focus on collecting their debts in quicker. Press Bailey is one of those. The beginning of lockdown 1, we just had our best ever month of fees, which meant our debtors were the highest they'd ever been. And that was scary because we were on the double-edged sword of thinking, okay, we just had a really good month, but here we are facing COVID and a big black unknown coming in front of us. And are we going to get paid for all the work we've just finished? Yeah. Actually, of course, what that did was focused everybody's minds, and we got much better as partners and managers at collecting the debt. And we've improved our cash flow dramatically during the year. We've built our work in progress quicker. Yeah. But if we hadn't done that, we would have been in a really, really tough place. And also because we've done that, we can't do it again. So actually, if we do get another cash crisis coming up, we can't now quite so easily claw it out of our debtors because we've done that once. We've improved our debtor position and our work in progress position. So for every businesses, they'll be in a different circumstance. But you can look at your business and actually say, well, what are the levers that I can pull, and what are the levers I don't have control of that somebody else is holding, i.e. the bank or HMRC through VAT deferral, etc. And how am I going to be able to react to changing circumstances ahead? Again, when it comes to valuation, for many businesses, they'll be looking to be able to return to the levels or even higher levels of profit and revenue ahead. But are they ready to? Because if they're full of debt right now, it'll be that much more difficult to gear up again because there's no capacity. It's already been taken by, unfortunately, the sunk costs that were paid out during lockdown 1 or lockdown 2 or even the current lockdown, where there wasn't the revenue coming on. So those costs have just created an overhead, created a debt, a bank loan now being relied upon that wasn't there a year ago, or a load of deferred tax that still got to be paid. And actually we're likely to see taxes increase as well. And whilst HMRC will have to be relatively kind, it can't be totally kind.
Yes. Yeah. We both know sort of the importance of being able to factor in sort of sensitivity and scenario analysis into financial forecasts, and I think sometimes when you mention those two words, people start worrying that it's got to be overcomplicated and it's got to be an all singing sort of all dancing financial model. But just in terms of in regards to what we're speaking about here, are you able to just sort of chat a little bit about what are the typical items that you'd actually expect us to see sort of flexed in a financial model at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You can make models very, very complex, or you can actually make them quite simple. And the importance is actually being able to track an outcome quite easily and identify the key thing. And we've talked a lot about cash already in this conversation, and cash is the king. Perhaps the variable that most businesses can't control is the level of sales, because it's not in their decision when somebody buys, it's in the customer's decision. And so simply actually looking at different sales levels is probably the simplest and most powerful way of managing cash flows between different sensitivities. Now, clearly some costs are directly correlated to sales, but in most businesses, that's only a relatively modest proportion. Most businesses tend to have fairly high fixed costs, or costs that are at least only changeable over a few months, not in a few days. And if an order is put back, if you've got a big order coming in today, which the customer's at the moment talking about being fulfilled by the end of the month, and then the customer suddenly says, actually, sorry, not quite ready, can we push that back a month? Well, that has a very significant impact, because you can't change your staffing in the next month, but your sales are suddenly delayed a month. It's unlikely to impact the time that he takes to pay that invoice. It's probably still 30 days, whether it's 30 days from the end of February or 30 days from the end of March. It's just the starting point has got delayed. So that, I think sales is the biggest variable that we can always flex. Margin perhaps would be a second one that you could do a little bit with, but that's not going to have quite the impact on cash in the short term as a delayed sale or suddenly an extra sales will have. And it's sales as well that actually will squeeze the working capital, particularly, either because you've had to fulfill the order, in which case you've had to purchase and pay for the stock, typically, if you're a manufacturing or a distribution or a retail company. And you now need to replenish that probably as well in order to be ready for the next order. And if that all happens quickly, then you will end up having lots of debtors, so cash locked up in debtors, and at the same time be having to lay out on ordering new stock. And I suspect credit terms with suppliers are not going to be as long in the next few months. I think every supplier will be tighter on their own credit control. And equally, we've got other factors sitting out there, like the delays caused either by Brexit related issues coming into the UK, or actually just by things like hygiene factors. Or even this week, we're seeing that shortages of something as simple as cardboard packaging. Amazon's apparently bought all the packaging. So if you're not Amazon and you're trying to ship anything anywhere, and you use cardboard to ship it to your customers in, you've got a problem if you can't ship it safely. And so there's a slightly unusual one that we probably haven't often talked about, but right now that'll be a real key issue for a load of businesses in the UK that actually have got product ready to ship, but nothing to ship it in.
Yeah.
And their choice is either wait or buy some more expensive shipping material. And instead of using cardboard, they're using some plastic or some other packaging material, but not the cheap cardboard they've been used to. So what's that doing? It's probably delaying some of the sales. It's probably putting the cost of delivery up, and none of that can be passed on to the customer. And possibly the delay might be meaning the customer says, actually, if you can't deliver it this week, I don't want it, I'll go somewhere else.
So just sort of moving so slightly away from models, but still on this notion of sort of reporting and actually, in regards to valuations. I read somewhere recently that businesses should be increasing the frequency of their reporting and actually frequency of which they conduct a valuation, particularly in response to sort of increased scrutiny, both now but also, as we sort of come out of this. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, I think the general reporting point is very, very important, and I'm a big fan of looking at reporting on a rolling 12-month basis, rather than getting fixated with financial year ends, which are a rather false thing in reality. They're there only to report to HMRC or to put a set of accounts in a company's house. But companies operate on an ongoing basis. And actually, trend analysis is much easier to identify if you've got a rolling 12-month view of things, both forwards and backwards. For instance, I was talking to a business yesterday that's in a significant growth phase. It's a lender, it's a bank, and they are expected to take lots of new loans on over the next year. But every time they take a new loan on, their profit and loss account for the current financial year will only show a small portion of the value of the loan they've just taken on in income terms. Because if they take the loan on in October and their year end is December, that loan might be for a 20-year period, but it's only going to get 2 or 3 months of interest reported in this year's accounts. But nevertheless, it has been won, and it is there as stable income now for the next 20 years, or at least the average time span that a customer takes to repay a 20-year loan, which in this particular bank's case is usually less than 20 years. But nevertheless, they have now got the certainty, certainly for the next 12 months, of the interest they're going to receive on that loan. So it's far better to report a forward 12-month view from now of what the revenue that the business now has achieved, rather than simply say, oh, to the end of December, this is what our income will be, because it's not a true picture. So that rolling 12 months, historic and forward, is really, really powerful, because it means you're always comparing a comparable period, and you'll see the trends then, the long-term trends of either you're generally growing, you're generally flat, or you're generally not, shrinking, very clearly on a simple graph. And many of us find graphs very quick to interpret compared to a page of numbers, particularly non-accountants. I think then, in terms of turning that into regular valuations, it's pretty straightforward, because the methodologies we use for valuations don't tend to change dramatically once you've set them for a particular company. Once you've done the research and thought through the valuation method for a business, whether it be a profits-based valuation or a revenue-based valuation or an asset-based valuation, once you've concluded on that, it's actually fairly straightforward to then have, next to your financial model, a valuation working, which is updated either once a year, or even once every time you do any kind of quarterly reporting or reporting. Because what are you then testing? Well, you're updating the financial numbers that are in your model and in your recent historics, and then you're just saying, is there any more evidence of the market approach to valuing this business, which might be demonstrated by competitor activity, deals in your sector, or it might be that actually, something else has changed in your business that means actually it's no longer appropriate to use the same analysis and same comparables that you were using last time. You've changed your business model from a subscription model to a pay-as-you-go model. Well, the valuations of those two different types of businesses are quite different.